What's going on? It's your boy DameSmiff, and today we're going to have a conversation about how India and US are going through a trade deal where we are going to be lowering the 50% tariffs we have on India down to 18%. And so we're going to be looking at it from the perspective of musicians, artists, and entertainers, and why this will be important going into the future as well as for the entire music industry. Okay. And so if you're interested in conversations like this, make sure you hit the like button so that way other people can know this video is dope and they should check it out, and also hit the subscribe button so that way you can catch my next video. So the key thing we have to worry about when we're developing different deals with different nations and things, in my opinion, is going to be the relationship, right? And so this tariff deal is essentially going to be lowering the tariffs upon India so that way they can get access to what would be essentially the biggest trade partner that they would have in terms of all the products that they want to export out of the country, right? And in return, they will then reduce the tariffs they have on us as far as industrial goods and tech goods. So this is going to be a really cool opportunity to build a relationship between the two nations, right? But what does that mean for musicians, right? What that means is that we can now get access to really cool tech as well as labor. So the concept behind hiring somebody overseas for really cheap, right, is not really a thing if you consider the relationship you have with the people you work with, right? So let's think of it this way. Like, you're a musician, possibly, maybe you're an artist, whatever, you create things, right? Wouldn't you want to charge what you think you're worth, right? So the issue that I think most people will come up with a deal like this is the relationship they have with money and the people they make money with, okay? So if, I'll say, for example, one country decides they want to be a cheapskate, that can be a problem. If one company decides they want to cut corners, that can be a problem. But we'll see how it looks in a quick little snapshot. And I'm going to react to a video from a channel called Money Control. They are actually really cool about showing us a lot of the things going on in the world based on business. So as a musician, it's cool to pay attention to these things so we can make better decisions going into our career in the future. So let's take a look and let's see what they have to say about the deal overall.
India and the United States have agreed on a major interim trade deal that could reshape exports, tariff and supply chain between the two countries. Here is what the agreement means for India. The biggest shift comes on tariffs. The United States will cut import duties on Indian goods to 18% and remove the additional 25% duty imposed earlier. This also gives Indian exporters a cost advantage over competitors like China, Vietnam and Bangladesh in several labor-oriented sectors. If the agreement moves towards the final deal, tariffs on key Indian exports such as generic pharmaceuticals, and diamonds and aircraft components could eventually drop to zero. This would significantly boost India's export competitiveness in the US market.
So essentially, she's explaining the deal in a nutshell, that it's going to provide basically a big customer for all of these exports that India has, just to put it in like a really simple, language, right? And so this is really good for India because previous to this deal, in order for them to sell to this particular customer, being the United States, they would have been hit with a 50% tariff, which means they would have had to pay upwards to 50%, probably more, to get the product available to United States customers. So now that the deal has lowered it down to 18%, I think she said an additional 25% on another fee, that's essentially going to allow way more money for them to be able to make with all the other opportunities that they have. Now, again, the one constant thing that I see lingering over this is the relationship that you can nurture between these two nations within this deal. There's a cultural understanding within business that if it's not nurtured, this deal wouldn't really make sense to most people.
United States of America ने भारत के साथ अपने संबंधों को और मजबूत बनाने के दृष्टिकोण से जो बायलैटरल ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट का पहला अंश अब तय किया है, उसके तहत 50% की जो रेसिप्रोकल टैरिफ भारत के निर्यात के ऊपर अमेरिका में लगती थी, वो अब 50% से घटकर मात्र 18% लगेगी.
Now, the deal also opens deeper access to American market, which remains India's largest trading partner. Officials says the framework gives Indian exporters access to a nearly $30 trillion economy. That's big. Sectors are likely to benefit includes textile, leather and footwear, gem and jewelry, machinery, chemical and auto components. Lower tariffs and simplified compliance rules could reduce cost and speed up entry into the US market.
So for me, when I hear what she just said, right, essentially what that says to me is that India just got an opportunity of damn near a lifetime to revamp the relationship that they have with people, just worldwide, right, and with their products. So if I were a musician or an artist right now, I would be thinking about ways that I could take advantage of the relationships, right? So if I wanted to be, let's say, an artist and I wanted to release my own shoe, well, the manufacturers in India wanting to tap into this market could see that as an opportunity. Let's say I wanted to develop my own app or digital audio workstation for, simple tasks like, just recording quick ideas or something like that. The influence of something like that can really, really work, but the execution is going to be needed by people who are really good at what they do. Oftentimes, they're not coming from, people that are readily available within your own country. So it's a win-win for both everybody. Like if we want to get really good products, but yet we don't want to, honestly pay American level prices, the opportunity is there to work with India. But again, this is where things can go wrong, right? If you were to take this route and India were to be cheap on their end as far as quality product, good business, good service, and things like that, that could sour the relationship and make this deal not really worth what it's really written on. So a lot of the times as musicians, we pick up our tools and our gadgets and things like that. And we don't really think twice about how it works, why it works, and where it comes from, right? But there are actually businesses specifically designed to make the components that build the devices and tools that we use today, right? And that's a layer behind probably some of your favorite instrument brands, musical equipment brands, and even software companies. There's actually companies that develop probably the chips and probably manufacture the metal needed for those chips and so forth, right? So this is kind of what I want to expose you to, is that there's a level above and beyond what you may be thinking when it comes to what is being affected by, let's say, the price of a stream today,
Push to become global supply chain, domestic centers and digital in cooperation in areas like electronics, data centers and digital infrastructure. This is expected to support domestic manufacturing and India's push to become global supply chain hub. Now, India has committed to purchasing $500 billion worth of US goods over the next 5 years. These imports include energy, aircraft, tech equipment and precious metal. Much of this includes essential imports and India already require, but the scale signals deeper economy alignment between New Delhi and Washington. Now, the government says the deal will boost export, support manufacturing and create jobs across MSMEs and labor-centric sectors. However, some economists warn that higher imports and market opening could widen a trade gap if exports do not rise proportionally.
Okay, so she's saying the economists make a point that if there's a huge gap, a trade gap between, I guess you could say, the demand for these goods and the actual delivery of these goods. Okay, so like it's possible that there could be at the tail end of this, I'll give you a better example. This could exponentially become a problem. So like we could be buying a lot of goods now and it'd be great, but then over time, very incrementally, we'll start to demand more and more and more and more. And so eventually, either we're going to run into a resource finite or limitation problem, or we're going to run into a cost problem, meaning they're going to have to, raise the cost of things to kind of ease back a little bit of the demand so that way we can manage things in terms of business better. But I could see that being a thing. A lot of it again is going to come down to culture, the understanding of how we consume, what actually is called a good, lasting, crafted product, things like that. So once we really start developing those kinds of ideas for ourselves culturally, then I think it'll be easier to determine what products we really, really want to take advantage of.
The interim framework is now expected to lead to a broader bilateral trade agreement. For now, it makes one of the biggest shifts in India-US economic ties, with a clear focus on export, tech, and global supply chain integration. As the story unfolds, we get more updates on this. We'll keep you posted. For more geopolitical stories, keep watching Money Control. I'll see you in the next one.
Dope. So that's Money Control, y'all. I really, really appreciate them. They're really cool. And a lot of what they cover does, deal with a lot of the things that we have to deal with as musicians and things like that. So when we're considering what affects us in the music industry, do we consider how it works? Essentially, like, are we just complaining and reacting to things? Does it matter to us how things work and things like that? So I wanted to take a quick look here with Gemini, your boy, Jim Neezy, Jim Manolio, Jim Navioli, your home slice lizardy. And we're going to see a little bit of a more explanation, as far as some questions that I've come up with for the AI to help explain what's really going on with the deal, right? Just to get a little bit, more of a wider scope of understanding, right? This helps me, it helps you, right? So it says the 2026 India-US trade deal will significantly impact several tiers of the Indian music industry, from traditional music manufacturers to digital streaming giants and event organizers. And because the deal slashes US tariffs on Indian goods from 50% to 18% and eliminates duties on certain tech companies, these Indian companies are positioned for major shifts, such as instrument manufacturers and exporters. India is a top 20 global exporter of musical instruments, and the US is one of its primary destinations. Cadence India, as a domestic brand, already expanding into the United States market, Cadence stands to benefit from the reduced 18% tariff, making their entry-level and mid-range instruments much more competitive against Chinese 35% tariff and Vietnamese 20% tariff brands. So we can stop here for a second. When you think of entry-level and mid-range, put in the comments what you think that means. And if you know what that means, put it in the comments anyway. I would love to know. And the reason why that's important is because there's way more entry level and mid range instruments that get sold. So when you think of, let's say, like a Music and Arts, a Guitar Center, or a Chuck Levins, or whatever it is, Sweetwater, Musicians Friends, all these people, right? They can sell a Yamaha trumpet from $600 to like $7,000, right? Depending on what the price is. But then when you think about a 35 to 20% tariff, and that's not even a Japanese tariff. If you think about those tariffs being placed on the company, just business wise, you will make way more money if you had an 18% tariff, right? That's just the mathing, right? But the other thing we have to think about is this. Have you heard of Cadence India, right? So now Cadence has an opportunity that's going to be better than their competition, but they have to strike while the iron's hot. They have to be marketing. They got to be consistency. They got to be delivery on demand. They got to be pretty much everybody else to truly take advantage of this deal. Otherwise, it'd be like if your parents give you like allowance, but you don't really spend it. Like, yeah, you save the money, but I mean, it's an allowance, like spend it, And so that's essentially what I took from that. So moving on, it says Bajao Entertainment, I hope I said that correctly, known for both retail and organizing festivals, Bajao's manufacturing and event production arms will benefit from the lower costs on imported high-end US audio gear, which India has agreed to reduce as part of the deal. So that's going to be pretty dope. So that means that if they want to come over and buy some Bose speakers for their events, some Sony or whatever it is, not Sony, but Bose, they can really get their money's worth now. So then moving on, the next way to help India out is in their digital streaming and rights management. With the deal's focus on digital trade, cooperation, and data center infrastructure, Indian streaming platforms will see improved operational efficiency and global reach. JioSaavn and Gaana, the local giants, are competing with Spotify and Apple Music, which is a great thing because over here we really only have Spotify. Every time I meet people, most people, y'all have Spotify and y'all hate Spotify, but you won't leave Spotify. It's kind of weird. But we have things like Apple Music, Amazon Music. A lot of people use YouTube Music. There's a lot of different platforms, but the three big ones are like Spotify, Apple, and possibly YouTube. It says this deal pushes for high-end tech integration and digital infrastructure, which will likely lower their server and data management costs. That's going to be dope for them. T-Series and Z Music Company. As India's largest music labels, these companies rely heavily on international royalties, improved trade relations, and IP alignment, which will mean smoother revenue flows from the millions of Indian music consumers residing inside of the US. So before we go forward to the next point, there is a huge market of like Tamil music, Bollywood music, just Indian, North Indian, South Indian music, right? And it's such a vast industry, or like portion of the industry. This data infrastructure part is the part that I think a lot of musicians misunderstand. When you're on, let's say, TikTok, and you're just recording like on this phone here and you post it on there, TikTok saves all the metadata, and that metadata makes them money because that post is an asset for them to then stream to other people, right? The problem that I think most musicians miss is that they miss the opportunity in understanding that process. They think that that process is something that they can't really exploit. And the problem that then creates is then you have millions, probably deca millions of people who are creating in their mind things, but they're not being paid for it, but then they're going to want to be paid for it in the back end. If you've not heard anything about Fortnite dances, if you've heard anything about these TikTok sounds and how a lot of the major labels are pulling out of these social media sites because of how you guys remix music and things like that, AI technology that is reconstituting music and things like that. When you think about IP alignment, international royalties, and things like that, it's going to be super important for us as musicians to understand this process, but also to be ahead of the tech companies as far as how we want to manage and control these things, because the tech companies don't have to prioritize musicians. It is not their MO. It is not moral for them to put us in a priority over themselves. This is strictly business. But again, this is an advantage for Indian musicians and Indian record labels to really take advantage of this. And again, this is an opportunity that is, weirdly enough, segregated for them. This is like a very unique deal for them. So if they don't take advantage of this within like the next 5 to 6 years, then everything is going to just kind of level out, because most other nations are going to probably play ball to try to get their tariffs lowered, and then everybody's just on an even field. So moving on to number 3, live performance and talent management. The interim framework, and she talked about that on the money control video, simplifies compliance and customs, which is a win for agencies that manage international tours. So collective artists networks, CAN, and TMs, like talent management, I guess these are just acronyms for reading sake. These agencies represent top tier Indian artists. Reduced red tape and lower tariffs on stage equipment like lighting rigs and specialized electronics make it cheaper to export large-scale Indian or iPop productions to the U.S. arenas. Now, if you've ever seen iPop, it's amazing. If you've ever seen A.R. Rahman, Tamil films, like all of the productions are very large. Even in like the intimate settings, there's usually like a good 30 people on stage. They're all dressed like perfectly, and the lighting is extreme because they have to basically accentuate a lot of the colors and the artwork that comes with it, right? This is not no hip-hop production where it's just a guy, a DJ, some beats, and some hoes. These are like true like production. So if they want to really take these shows and then put them on a plane, ship them to your city, set them up in a theater or in a community center, and then get it really popping full of people safely with the proper accord and get paid for it properly, This makes sense. This is pretty cool. And then only much louder, OML, known as the NH7 Weekender, OML can more easily bring in American talent and specialized festival tech from the United States at a lower cost due to India's commitment to reducing tariffs on the US tech and industrial goods. Moving on, it says specialized tech and audio production. So Devo, a major digital media and music distribution company in South India, they will benefit from the 0% duty access on electronics and semiconductors included in the deal, which are critical for the hardware used in their massive distribution and content creation hubs. So all in all, this is pretty amazing for India and Indian musicians and things like that. So if you're from India, or if you have an Indian background, or if you've got family over there, definitely educate them on this deal and how it's going to function, not even just for musicians and artists and things like that, but if you really want to take advantage of this, you might have a cousin or an auntie who sings, or somebody who can understand accounting and things like that. These record labels, they have job openings. These musicians, they need positions filled. And if you want to really take advantage of this deal between these two nations and become a truly powerful musician in your career, understanding these processes and how these relationships work between these nations is going to be awesome. Unless you just want to stay in your hometown and be the coolest guy in, I don't know, wherever the fuck you went to high school. But that's all I have for you today. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know. This is another dope video for me. I like making these videos because it's going to help you understand business. So if you want to be in the music, what is it called? Business, then this is going to help you out later. But I will see you guys in the next one.